Hey everyone, Cleo here, and today we are going over my TBR. It's another 3 months since the last time I did one of these update videos, so it's about time to tell you guys what is left on my TBR. It's a very interesting one. In case you have been following my channel, you know that on the 2nd of July in 2022 I bought like 17 books. I bought some more throughout the rest of the month. So you know, relatively speaking, going from 0 TBR to somewhere like 20 books or something in one particular month, making me kind of fear like I was going to go back to a humongous TBR instantly. But so the goal has always been to read all of my newly acquired books within the year. So the 2nd of July was the first sort of like moment in which I had some books that would need to be read. Now, I'm happy to say that I did manage to read all of them before the sort of like 1 year time period. All the books that I acquired in July I have read before the acquisition date. However, I did have like on the 1st of July I did have 2 of the July books still on my shelf, so I am definitely going to be including them as well in this video. They have been concluded in the meantime. So on the 1st of July I had 27 books left on my TBR, and I forgot to take a screenshot of the average amount of days that the books had been on that TBR. I'll try to remember to do it next time. Let's get started with the ebook that I have. So there's only one ebook that I currently have like counting for this TBR, because when it comes to ebooks, I'm only counting the ones that I acquired after the 1st of January, because before that I wasn't really counting my ebooks for my TBR 0 project. The one ebook that I have on my official TBR at the moment is One for My Enemies by Olivia Blake. This is basically like I was just tempted, you know. For most of the year, whenever I've acquired an ebook, it's been one that I've been intending to read right that minute. Only exception for that being the Secret Project books. But this one was just one that was on sale and I couldn't stop myself, so I got it. This is a book about rival witch gangs, and that's really all I know about it. Olivia Blake was kind of like an author that went viral somewhere last year or so when her book The Atlas 6 like blew up out of nowhere. And so yeah, I wanted to give her a chance, and so I'm gonna try One for My Enemies. I'm confused because she has another book coming out later in this year, and that's the title that was popping into my head, but the one that I have for the time being is One for My Enemies. Now, moving on to this display over here, the first few books that I'm going to be showing are the ones that are at the top here. Those are mainly like the hardcovers that I have on my shelves. I have like 2 extra hardcovers that are on the bottom shelf, but like these are the ones that I'm displaying up top. So the ones that we have up there are the Battle Drum by Sarah El Arifi. This is a book that came out last month. I bought it when I was in London, so it hasn't been on my shelf for that long. It is a Waterstones edition, and this is the sequel to The Final Strife, in which we are looking at this group in which we are looking at a society that is very heavily segregated based on the color of your blood. And at some point in the history of this world, the plot was kind of elaborated to steal red-blooded babies in order to replace them with blue-blooded babies, and train the red-blooded babies in order for them to one day infiltrate red blood society and kind of destroy it from the inside. Now, this plot was discovered and a tragedy ensued, but one of these children is still alive, and it's about time for her to enter into a competition in order to try and gain entry to red blood society. Next up, we have one that I don't know too much about. This is an Illumicrate book. This is Some Desperate Glory by Emily Tesh. I have already previously read out the synopsis for this one, but I keep forgetting it. But so this is a sci-fi book that I got through Illumicrate. I will definitely be trying it, but it is not really my highest priorities. So, you know, maybe it will stick around until like the 1-year anniversary comes up. Next up we have A House with Good Bones by T. Kingfisher. This is a horror novel. As far as I'm aware, it is a haunted house story. That's all I really know about it. I have only read one T. Kingfisher so far, which is Nettle and Bone, but I definitely did enjoy this one. So when I saw this in London, I desperately wanted to pick it up so I can try some more T. Kingfisher. One of the oldest books on my TBR at the moment is Destiny of the Dead by Cal Kate. This is the sequel to The Fate of the Fallen, the second book in the Shroud of Prophecy series. So in the Shroud of Prophecy series, we are looking at what if the chosen one dies and what if their companion kind of has to take up the slack. So our protagonist is a guy who for all of his life has just considered his best friend to be just that. However, it turns out that his best friend is actually the chosen one who's supposed to save the entire world. So when they find out his friend has to go off on the mission, he decides to join him, and very soon the chosen one dies. So what happens next? Cal Kate's fantasy is a little bit more lighthearted, a little bit more sort of on the comedic side. I really enjoy their writing, and so I wanted to try more of their works. I definitely enjoyed his Dark Tidings series a little bit more, but I definitely enjoyed myself with Fate of the Fallen as well. I am hoping to reread that in July so that I can go into this one in August. And this was also a book that was gifted to me by a lovely subscriber of mine, Tufty. Thank you so much for this. Then, before I forget them, I'm going to go over the two ones that I've since finished. Yeah, just drop them on the floor, why not? So the first one is Kai K by Vaishnavi Patel. This was a gift from Larissa. I have gotten around to it now. You will have my thoughts on this one in the July wrap-up. But this is a retelling of the Ramayana. It's an Indian myth, and we are seeing this myth told from the perspective of a character called Kai K. Now Kai K is a young girl who has been raised amongst boys, and so is a little bit more on the adventure side than perhaps her traditional father would like to see her. She is then married off to a rivaling kingdom, and there she kind of has to find her way, find her place within a dynamic involving her husband and two other of his wives. Yeah, this is not a review. And then the other one is The Black Coast by Meg Brooks. So this is the first book in a series. This is the God Killer Chronicles. In this one we are mainly following this one particular seaside town which is invaded by raiders. Now, raiders in the past have always come to plunder and move on again. However, these ones have an intention to settle here, and they ideally want to be settling peacefully. Of course, considering past rivalries and differing cultures, that leads to a lot of strife. Alright, moving on to level number 2. So here we have A Dowry of Blood by S.T. Gibson, another one of my London purchases. This is a horror novel, or is it fantasy? Not entirely sure. Maybe it crosses the boundaries. It is a book that is a retelling of Dracula told from the perspective of his wives. Then we have the concluding novel in a fantasy series. This is The Light of All That Falls by James Islington. When will I ever get around to it? I don't know. Will I have remembered enough of the rest of the series to be able to follow along? Probably not. So the Lycanius trilogy is a series in which we're looking at, or it all starts with these 3 friends who are basically at this sort of magic academy. In this world, magicians are very much like treated in a somewhat degrading way. They're definitely mistrusted because in the past there has been some abuse of magical powers, and so magicians are currently magically bound to these set of rules, and one of these rules, for example, is that they cannot attack or harm any non-magical people. So these 3 friends are at the onset of basically their sort of like end test, so to speak, and if they cannot pass, they will be stripped of their magical powers and they will become shadows. Now, right before this test is about to take place, one of these boys who's been kind of uncertain about the test because he really struggles with his powers, he gets a late night visit telling him that he better not take part in the test and flee before the test can take place because there's something different about him. I really enjoyed this series so far. It's like very traditional fantasy, but it feels very new as well. Like there's something about it that feels very like reminiscent of the traditional fantasy that I would be reading when I was like 16 or something like that, but there's a lot of new stuff going into it as well. It never feels stale, it never feels predictable, but there's also a lot when it comes to the world building that, especially in book number 2, came into the story where I was just like lost a lot of the time, and I'm worried about book number 3. Next up, we have The Lost Metal by Brandon Sanderson. This is the 4th, right, and final book in the 2nd era of Mistborn. Mistborn is a series that I really enjoy, but Era 2 is not. So I've not really been looking forward to picking this one up, and I should have definitely waited until the smaller paperbacks were coming out because I have the rest in the small paperbacks. But yeah. This series takes place like 200 years, I want to say, after the events of Mistborn Era 1. The people and the events of Mistborn Era 1 have kind of passed down into legends, and we're following entirely new people. One of them is Wax, right? Wax, who's a detective who is basically put on some sort of a magical case. I mean, really, I don't know more to say about it. These are sort of like fantasy detective stories with like gunslinger sort of like technology to it. Yeah, if you like detective stories and like banter between detective and sidekick and stuff like that, you might like this. If you like steampunk fantasy, you might like that, but all of those things are things that I either don't have any experience with or don't like. So then we have The City of Last Chances by Adrian Tchaikovsky, of which I don't know anything anymore. I think it has to do with rebellion, and I think it's going to be quite political in that sense, but don't ask me anything else about it. This will be by first Adrian Tchaikovsky, so I'm hoping to have a good experience with it. I haven't actually heard too many people talk about this because it was quite like anticipated, I feel like, especially because of this cover and like the beautiful editions that were existing of it. I feel like a lot of people were like excited about it, but I don't feel like I've seen anybody talk about it after they've read it. So it would be interesting to maybe check those out after I've read this book. But so yeah, this is a book that definitely still needs to be read this year, so you won't have to wait too long neither for my thoughts on it. And then the last thing on this layer is 2 comic books. So first up we have Buffy the Vampire Slayer Chosen One. So this is a volume that I've half finished because half of this needed to be read somewhere in the beginning of the reading order of this comic book series, and the other half is more for like now. Not really. I still need to finish 3 other volumes within this series before I can continue with that one. But so hopefully that will still happen. And then we have Saga Volume 10. I'll probably be picking this up in like August or something for Magical Readathon. It's Buffy asking for her food, but I will wait until I finish this video. I'm sorry, Buffy. I know. And then like in December or so, I'm just suspecting another like volume in this series will come out, and then I'll ask that one for Christmas and we continue like that. And then finally we have the bottom layer, which is actually the one that is the fullest at this point in time, which was like my literary fiction, non-fiction, stuff like that on it. First one on there is the ginormous The Earth Transformed, The Earth Transformed, An Untold History by Peter Frankopan. This is a stunning edition that I don't think is coming out very well because of the lights coming in from the side window. But so this is a non-fiction about the history of Earth, really of the planet, not of the people inhabiting it. And so interesting to see how much there is to say about that. A lot, apparently, considering the page count. But yeah, we'll just have to figure out. I'm thinking like I should probably spread this book out a little bit, and so I should probably start to pick it up every once in a while and get through a chapter or so. It has 24 chapters in total. So if I just do like a chapter or 2 a month for a while, then you know, by the time I get to the final month, I'll be pretty close to it. I think I purchased this in May, maybe? Yeah, May probably, right? So yeah, I'm like 2 months after I purchased it, so it would mean like the final month I would have to read maybe like 6 chapters, I don't know, but in any case I would be like pretty close to it at that point in time. That would make it a lot more manageable to get through. 2 other non-fictions that I have is Unwell Women by Eleanor Claghorn. This is a journey through medicine and myth in a man-made world. So this is all about how there is gender discrimination in the medical field, or how women are treated differently to men, how women are disbelieved when it comes to medicine and things like that. And so probably a very bleak read, but I did really find it interesting to look at, like the book called don't remember the title of it, but so there's a book also about like the data about the differences between women and men, about how this is a man-made world in terms of data, and I found that to be very interesting, and so I think I'm going to learn very interesting and very angering facts from this one. And then we have Upstream by Mary Oliver. This is a collection of essays. It is nature writing, as the cover also very much implies, and I'm hoping to potentially read them this month. It is in one of my polls for Game Night-a-thon. I'm hoping that potentially it will get voted on, but we will see. Next up, I'm gonna go through these without any sort of like systematic explanation, because some of them are translated but then they're not all together in line, so I'm just gonna go through them randomly. So we have The Day the Sun Died by Jan Jenke. This was a gift to me, by the way. The same for Upstream by Mary Oliver. Both of these were a gift to me from Hans over at the Discord of Jolene Reads. We were doing a Secret Santa and I was gifted these 2 books by him. The Day the Sun Died is a sci-fi book, and it is a book that kind of looks at a society that one day sees that its occupants no longer go to sleep. So rather than in the evening going to bed and like closing their eyes, they actually continue working through the night. And so I'm assuming it's gonna kind of give a criticism on communism or something like that. Next we have another one of my June purchases, and that is Scattered All Over the Earth by Yoko Tawada. This is a sci-fi as well. It's translated from Japanese in this case. The other one was translated from Chinese. In this one, basically, the protagonist is like the only Japanese person still on Earth, or she believes herself to be so, until she finds out news about potentially another person who knows Japanese somewhere on Earth, and so she's going out on an adventure to try and find this person and try to kind of reclaim the feeling of being able to talk to somebody in her native language. So post-apocalyptic book. I have not read a post-apocalyptic Japanese book. It will be very interesting because like I associate Japanese literature with like very slice of life, very sort of like low stakes, small scope literature. So I'm interested to see what a Japanese take on post-apocalyptic literature would look like. Then we have one that I'm about to pick up, and that is The 7 Moves of Mali Almeida by Shehan Karunatilaka. This is a Sri Lankan book. This is a gay book, and that is all I know about it. But it is like, it was nominated for the Booker Prize last year. It is one of the favorites of the Lonesome Readers, whose videos I like to follow. It's one of the favorites of 2 people I know over on Discord, so I have high hopes for this one. Then we have The Family Chow by Lan Samantha Chang. This is a multi-generation story about a family who runs a Chinese business in a small town in the US, or like in Wisconsin, not a small town I guess. But I'm interested to see what this one will be like. I think this is also one that was recommended by the Lonesome Reader, that is how it got onto my radar. But yeah, I'm eager to try it out once. I really like family sagas. This is a little bit of a different family saga than the ones that I typically pick up. But yeah, I'm eager to see whether this one also works. Then another translated work, Greek Lessons by Han Kang. So this is a Korean novel, and it's looking at a woman who is learning Greek, and both her and her teacher kind of drawn together because of their sense of like isolation and loneliness. And I know it also deals with like the idea of aging, so the teacher is growing older and he's losing his eyesight and stuff like that, and so it's also looking at how to deal with that. And then we have Strangers I Know by Claudia Durastanti. So this is a book that is semi-autobiographical, so it's looking at the daughter of deaf parents, which is the case for Claudia Durastanti, but I don't know anything else about the story anymore. I know that when I originally read this premise I was like really intrigued, but I've forgotten everything about it, and that's also how I like to go into my books. And because there is a chance that this book is also going to be read this month, I'm not going to go back into the premise at this point in time. Maybe next time if I still haven't read it by then. Then I have two more super small translated literature works. So we have No Longer Human by Osamu Dazai. This is a sort of like Japanese classic to some extent. I think it's World War I or I think it's World War II literature, or like post World War II literature. I think it has to deal with depression, but I don't know too much about it, as always. I'm gonna kind of keep it at that. And then the other one that I have is I Who Have Never Known Man by Jacqueline Hoffman. This is translated from the French. And in this one we have a group of women who are being held in an underground facility somewhere. And so they don't really know anything about the outside world. All they know are their guards until one day they are let loose into the world. And then I'm going to end it with a graphic novel and a manga. The graphic novel is The Girl from the Sea by Molly Knox Ostertag. This is, as far as I'm aware, a queer manga. I mean, it is definitely queer. It's coming from Gaze the Word bookstore in London. It is a queer story of two girls who fall in love with one another, but one of them has quite some, one of them is keeping a lot of secrets and the other one has quite some mystery revolved around them. And this image kind of makes me wonder whether they're like a mermaid or something like that, because basically they come across one another in the sea. And then the final thing that is on my shelf still is No Longer Human by Junji Ito. So this is the manga adaptation of the book that I showed you earlier, which is No Longer Human. So I don't know more about this compared to that one. So I am probably going to be doing these close together so that I can kind of compare the original with its adaptation, because the original is like what? Not even 200 pages it seems like, and the adaptation is like a 600-page manga, but we will see. I hope it'll make for a very interesting video, and for me I hope it'll make for a very interesting reading experience. But yeah, with that we've gone through all the books that were on here before the start of July. Yeah, there are some more extra pieces on there in the meantime that I will just put on there again now after ending this video. But so I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Hopefully some of this will change around by the time we do this again in 3 months time, and I'm pretty certain that they will. But so I hope you guys enjoyed this video and see you guys for the next one. Bye!